Do they tell you size definitely matters? We have all heard that the majority of women say size doesn't matter. But to those who are big, what have they told you? Story 1. That oral, anal, cowgirl, and doggy aren't possible because it's too uncomfortable. Even if I let her control the thrusting with me behind, she may end up slamming back and blaming me. Missionary is great, but you can't put her knees back. Prone is a good position if she wants to change it up. Like the other commenter said, at first they are kind of fascinated, but then it wears off after a while. The women that like their cervix being hit can be fun, but they usually have a screw loose somewhere. Story 2. I found they are more infatuated with looking at it or playing with it. If they are attracted to size, they love to perform oral, and I enjoy that aesthetic as well. But some women are more capable of accommodating size than others. The ones who aren't as capable probably do prefer average to smaller. I've had times where it's not comfortable due to shallowness or an angle, but sometimes it's perfect and a great fit. It's not black and white. Story 3. Well, the best compliment I've ever got was, "Your dick is perfect." I've only been told that once, but for some reason, it hit me harder than when they've commented on how big it is. Story 4. On the one hand, I have been told that she loves the feeling of my huge presence and how full it makes her feel. On the other hand, she is often too sore to have intimacy 2 days in a row. So I guess you win some and you lose some. Story 5. I've had plenty of people say that there's no substitute for the feeling of fullness from the bigger size. Most love it. For some, it has been a bit much and I've not been able to go fully in. Story 6. Woman here hoping it's okay to chime in. Size is not the most important factor. This is absolute truth. Men can be amazing lovers at all different sizes by learning their woman and working with what they have. However, I will say visually most women are captivated and turned on by the appearance of a large penis. I don't mean freakishly large, but bigger. I'd be lying if myself and every female friend I've ever had haven't had an absolute urge to touch, play with, and engage with more endowed men. I don't particularly understand why. Before anyone smaller feels inadequate, please know that just as most of you love and admire breasts of all sizes and shapes, we feel the same about your penis. There is nothing like seeing a man hard for you regardless of his size. Story 7. An ex of mine had an above 8-inch penis, and it genuinely was not enjoyable sex unless we spent an ungodly amount of time engaging in foreplay and stretching. On top of this, there were many fan-favorite positions that were either off-limits or required preventive steps to stop pain and discomfort. Would not recommend. Story 8. I've been disqualified from a relationship with a woman I really appreciated because we aren't physically compatible. It's the only one that I've really lost for it, but I really liked her. Story 9. I learned late in life that I have what's called a boyfriend dick. There are parts deeper inside that, when you can hit them, apparently can add a new stimulation to their orgasm. 2 of them were nurses, but I forgot what they said it was called. Boyfriend dick means it's large enough to hit the deep spot but not too long, so you can still fully penetrate and stimulate the clitoris with your hip movements. The biggest takeaway from my friends with benefits and such is that you can still impress her with proper foreplay. If you have a smaller size, learn to perform oral sex on women and enjoy it. I promise you will find partners. Hope this helps, my friends. Story 10. For me, it's always been, at first sight, all hot and amazing. They give you nice compliments they've seen in adult content. Then comes trying to fit it in, which can literally be a pain. But with plenty of lubricant and foreplay, you're set. Sometimes you're getting a nice rhythm. Then suddenly something slips, you hit a cervix, and she's there looking like she's just been shot. Also, go too hard or deep. Same issue. Want to go again? No, they're still tender. It really isn't all it's cracked up to be. Also, random quick encounters? Not an option unless you're carrying a bunch of lubricant around. It gets easier with a partner the longer you date, but for one-night stands and the like, can be pretty tedious. Story 11. I'm girthy, not overly long, like a Red Bull can. Women love it. But sex isn't just penetration. Sex is all of it. Women don't care about penis size at all. They want love and attention, fingers and mouth, touch and attention. Story 12. It took me 11 years for a girl to finally tell me, and then a lot of experiences just made sense. Regular condoms would not fit, so I hated them. Now I know to buy 64 millimeters. I got poked by an intrauterine device with another girl. Two girls stopped about 10 seconds in after plenty of foreplay. You can't go in 100%. Oral sex always sucked. I never knew why so many loved it. Anal is off limits. I can't do the pretzel thing. If I wear loose shorts, I catch people looking. Beige chinos get the most looks with constant adjusting. Story 13, going against the grain here, but yes, size matters, though not necessarily how you might think. Keep in mind, this is totally my perspective, and I've only slept with a small sample size, no pun intended. If I was having a one-night stand, I'd prefer a longer and wider penis. Takes less skill to wield, and I'm therefore, on average, going to have better sex. In a relationship, size is less important, but you must make up for it with enthusiasm and skill. Sadly, after years of having sex in a relationship, you won't always feel like putting in the extra effort every time, so there are times in a relationship where the sex isn't as good as with a bigger penis. That being said, the sex I've enjoyed more has always come as a result of enthusiasm and skill, not size. Firstly, let's talk about length. A longer penis does not necessarily equate to a better feeling, but it allows for more maneuverability. I'll call an average penis about 5.5 inches, as it varies by ethnicity and nation. When I've experienced a 5-inch penis or an 8-inch penis, the average-sized one was more likely to fall out. This affects rhythm, a core part of sex, as an interruption can ruin your climax. Not a deal-breaker by any means, but it was something I had to think about, and therefore it could be hard to completely get into the act of having sex when I'm trying to be careful not to have it keep slipping out. Secondly, an average-sized penis is going to have a harder time with some positions. If you want to try different angles, then your penis has to reach further than, say, the missionary position, especially if your partner has different physical attributes. For me, this meant it felt less stimulating. Less of the penis was moving in and out of me, leading to restricted and less dynamic movement. I could still reach climax, but it was a bit harder. Finally, a longer penis equates to a greater sense of fullness. This isn't important to everyone, but I personally enjoy the feeling of being full, and a bigger penis gives you that. I will say that taking an 8 to 9-inch penis is challenging, not only the first time but any time you haven't had sex for a while. That is a lot of penis, and it can be uncomfortable at first or even a bit painful, requiring more foreplay and patience as a result. A penis this big can also hurt if approached too aggressively. With an average-sized penis, you can be more forceful and it's easier to manage. Girth is simpler. It directly translates to pleasure. A thicker penis provides more stretch and is more likely to stimulate the G-spot. While the stretch feels good, if you aren't hitting the G-spot, it's much harder for me to climax. However, even more than a long penis, a wide one can be difficult to handle for the first time or after a break. I prefer much more foreplay and a gentle approach if you have a thicker one. That's pretty much how size has affected me during sex. Again, this is just my experience and not something everyone would agree on. I will also say that sex is both physical and mental. For the physical aspect of sex, I found toys can help. Vibrators can make sex easier, as you don't have to try and stimulate the clitoris while also concentrating on your rhythm. A penis sleeve can add more girth, though it may reduce sensation for the penis owner. If you are less well endowed, you can make up for it by enhancing the mental aspects of sex. Suggestive texts, romantic dates, and small touches throughout the day can all help set the mood. During the act, enthusiasm is so important. When I'm having sex, I want to be thinking about sex, not the awkward parts of my body on display. Lack of inhibition, enthusiasm, and great foreplay can all help get me out of overthinking and into the moment. The best sex I've ever had is where I'm completely focused on you and the act. That feeling of intimacy is far more important than your size. A well-endowed, experienced partner can, on average, provide better physical sex. But mind-blowing sex is mind-blowing regardless of size. Hope this answers the question. Story 14. Not well-endowed but have a very honest girlfriend. Size can matter, but sometimes the most well-endowed are one pump and done. So it can help, but it's not everything. Story 15. I've only been with my wife. She says size matters, but not necessarily in a bigger is always better sort of way. She says there's a range that's pleasurable. Below it, and it's not enough to feel very good. Above it, and it can be uncomfortable. She also says the top of that range is best. That if a woman could magically change her guy's size, he'd be the longest and thickest she can handle without discomfort. For my part, she seems happy with my girth, but says she would have my length be about an inch shorter. Being just shy of 8 inches makes it easy to do a lot of positions, but we have to be kind of careful in deep penetration positions. For example, if she's on top, she very rarely sits straight up because I bottom out completely. It becomes uncomfortable for me with the direct downward pressure trying to bend my penis. Some women really love the pressure on their cervix. My wife is more fond of the G-spot. Her favorite positions are mostly those that limit depth a little, like lying down and spooning. Story 16. I'm not endowed. I'm just slightly above 6 inches, and it curves. 2 women told me I was really big and I was hurting them. Both of these women were 5 feet tall, so I do believe that in general, size doesn't matter as long as you're at least average. However, the size queens do exist, and they will absolutely only care about size, but it's not all women, so it's okay. From having sex with different women, I've learned that the most important thing in sex for women is actually foreplay. They're way more wet and a lot easier to make them climax. Story 17. What I was told was that it was degrees. Normal is normal and feels good. Bigger is better, but there definitely is a too big. Also, how much they like the guy plays a factor. Story 18. From what I've been told, they appreciate the bigger ones up to a certain size. Then it becomes painful. This one woman said she wouldn't have it with bigger cocks because she was not obliged to. And yes, they make fun of and tell you about the smaller ones they've had contact with. Story 19. Physically, it doesn't matter as much. This is evidenced by what sizes women statistically choose for sex toys. Psychologically, it totally matters, both for perceived value, bragging rights, and for raw experience. Women have their different preferences, but in most cases, a guy who looks like Jason Momoa and portrays the image of a freight train will have a bigger impact than an average guy who feels the same. Behind closed doors, most women love it. But the feedback is always about the visual aspects for me. It's kind of like us loving a good rack. It caused an issue with some pain sometimes. It's also kind of a drag as a guy not to go in the full length, kind of unwieldy. But even then, they still love it for the reasons listed above, bragging rights and atmosphere. Story 20. Until I was well into my 20s, I just thought, it's so big, was just something women said as an ego stroke. But some positions can only happen late in the game, and some things are off the table entirely. Story 21. I should start by saying that I am not really well endowed, but even I have been with girls who were wincing in pain or discomfort in certain positions. I cannot imagine how they would have dealt with a penis that was actually big. When it comes to penis size, good enough is good enough. It's just an anatomical fact that most vaginas aren't very deep. Most women feel pain when a penis hits against the cervix, and the parts of the female reproductive system that feel the most pleasure aren't the deepest. I have also heard that the feeling of being filled up by a penis mostly comes from girth, not length. Story 22. I'm like 7 3/4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, 6 inches at the base. So big but not giant. About half of women have had problems in some positions. My wife can't ride while sitting upright on me. She bottoms out and her clitoris can't reach my body to rub, and it hurts. For that position, she prefers a penis more like 5 inches. Then it hits her G-spot perfectly as she reaches the clitoris too. I've accidentally hurt some women. My wife would prefer it if I were about an inch shorter and a little less thick at the base. She does like the length for some other positions, though. Other women. One just turned me down for penetrative intercourse when she saw it because I'm petite, and so is my vagina, and big penises just hurt. Many haven't said anything. Some said positive things. I'm polyamorous and have a girlfriend. She absolutely loves it at its size, but I'm kind of right at her limit. Her last lover was bigger, and they almost never had penetrative intercourse because it was difficult, but did oral and hand stuff. I found many women enjoy it for the first few times when really excited, but then later, as there's a bit less newness energy, they may be more likely to find it too big. Finding ones who really like deep penetration and cervical stimulation is key. Not all do, but those that do love it. Story 23. That I have a giant mega wiener and am definitely having lots of sexy sex with attractive grocery store employees who gave up modeling. I am also very intelligent and the tallest. Story 24. I was once with a man with the face and physique of an Adonis who warned me of his endowment. He wasn't being boastful in any way. In fact, there was a degree of shame and embarrassment in his words. When I encountered the endowment, I could see why. Here I abandon all decorum if I am to be honest. It was about 4 or more inches too long. For fear of hurting me, and he was right, he could not make love freely. Nor could he ever fully immerse himself in the experience. Caution was crucial for him, and it actually broke my heart for him. After it was over, I didn't say anything in private. I didn't have to. We both knew that it was entirely unworkable. For other reasons, we didn't stay together.